What's up, fam? Elijah Scheidler here, and if you couldn't tell, lots of new stuff in the works. So sneak peek of stuff that's still yet to come. Working on a studio space to be able to deliver content quicker and hopefully higher quality. So not quite all the way done, but some of the stuff that you can see in the background, a little bit of a sneak peek. And then next week, I'm gonna be revealing the identity for this video series. If you haven't engaged the challenge yet of seeing how I draw the logo and submitting your idea of what it looks like, last week to try that out, look up in the description above. You can submit your idea of what you think that looks like. That would be a huge blessing to me. But this week, insights from God and just his overwhelming love for us. And especially within the realm of words of knowledge. I was hanging out with a friend of mine named Adam, and we were going over some business stuff, but we both love one another and we love the Lord. And so sometimes we find it really hard to press forward and be focused in our business ventures. While we were doing some contract work, he said, "Oh, Elijah, I have this. Oh wait, never mind. Gotta stay focused on business. I'll write it down and we'll talk about it once we're done with business." We finished up with like 5 minutes to spare before I had to go. And I asked him, "What was it that you were thinking of that you wanted to share with me?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I wanted you to just have this book." So he hands me the book, and I just start absentmindedly kind of looking at it, and I ask him, "What is it that you think would resonate with me in this book?" And so he starts talking about how the book speaks about culture and being cultural creators, and how Jesus is restoring us to a position of being cultural creators. And as he's sharing these things with me, I'm thinking to myself, oh yes, I absolutely resonate with this. And so to share with him the commonality that yes, these are things that I'm thinking about and I really would resonate with this book, I start sharing principles that God has shared with me, things that I've written about just between me and God. I've never broke them loose out of my journals at all. And so I start sharing these things with Adam, my friend, and he's looking down, and as I share the first principle, he looks straight up at me. He's like, "Wait, hold on. Have you already read this book?" And my response was, "No, I haven't. I'm telling you my principles about culture. So back to what I'm telling you." I share the second principle with him, and he just stops. He says, "Wait, no, that is exactly what's in this book." He opens the book, gives it to me. It says, "Read this page." And guys, it was exactly, not kind of like, exactly what I've written in my journals. I was absolutely blown away. I started getting super emotional. Later on, when I was talking with my wife about my experience, I just broke down in my kitchen and bawled. It was such a beautiful moment of God declaring to me that the things that I'm studying, the things that I'm writing about, the things that I'm longing for in God, that they're true, that he's affirming that I am hearing from him and that I am pursuing his heart in the things that I'm going after. My adventure with Adam was so encouraging. God, man, he gave me a shot to the arm, and then he gave me a swift kick to the pants. I don't know if you've heard of the names of God, like Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Jireh. There's also this name, it's Jehovah Sneaky. You gotta watch out for that guy. He'll sneak up and get you good. But seriously though, I was so encouraged. This word from God that he knows what I'm up to, that he's affirming and confirming that I'm hearing from him. And then he sneaks up behind me and gives me a swift kick to the pants. As in my video, Getting Elijah Backwards, I really resonate with my namesake, that he spoke very zealously for the Lord, that he wasn't afraid to poke the bear, as it were, and to call people out into a zealous and pure-hearted pursuit of the person of God. I identify with that aspect of Elijah, but I also identify with how he responded after his confrontation with the prophets of Baal. It says, after his confrontation with the prophets of Baal, and fire descends and consumes his sacrifice, it says Elijah gets depressed and runs away to Horeb, the mountain of God. He hides out in a cave, and God comes to him and says, "Elijah, why are you here?" Now, God has supernaturally empowered Elijah to get to the mountain of the Lord. But even in God empowering him to get there, God invites vulnerability. He wants our hearts with him. He wants us to trust him with the contents of our heart, regardless of what's in there. God has empowered Elijah to get to the mountain of the Lord, to get to Mount Horeb. But Elijah's hiding out in the cave, and God comes to him and says, Elijah, why are you here? And Elijah sounds off on God and says, I have been very zealous for the Lord, but your people have abandoned the covenant, torn down your altars, they've killed your prophets, and now they're trying to kill me, and I am the last one to bow the knee to Baal. That's why I'm here. God says, interesting. Go out and stand on the mountain, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then it says that the Lord passes by Elijah, and the wind of his presence moving through the atmosphere of earth is blowing boulders in front of him, smashing them on the rocks and tearing the mountains to bits. But it says God was not in the wind. And then he comes in an earthquake, and he comes in fire, and it says in both that God is not in either one. And then it says that a still small voice comes to Elijah. And in the Hebrew, it's literally, he comes in the sound of silence and says, Elijah, why are you here? And scripture says that when Elijah heard the still small voice, that he covered his face with his cloak and went and stood out in the entrance of the cave. I think this is so powerful because when Elijah walks to the mouth of the cave, covering his face because of his reverence and his awe for the glory and the holiness of God, expressed in the silence and the gentleness of God's person, that when God asks him in that still small voice, that Elijah doesn't change anything about the contents of his heart. It's verbatim, the exact same statement. But I'm willing to bet you anything that his tone changed. Rather than throwing his angst and his frustration and his depression and his sense of isolation and rejection in God's face and balling it all up in words flung at God as a weapon, Elijah sinks down into the knowledge that the Lord, he is God, and says, I've been very zealous for you, and your people have abandoned covenant. They've torn down your altars. They've killed your prophets, and now they're attempting to kill me, and I'm the last one to bow the knee to Baal. The second time it says that in God hearing the overflow of Elijah's heart, that God deputizes him, gives him a task to descend the mountain of the Lord, to go forward with vision in what he's to do in obedience and love before the Lord, rather than hiding out in a cave. And that's where God gave my backside a boot. I feel deeply in my heart, very strongly, that a large portion of the North American church has broken covenant with God, that they've torn down the ways of Christ, and that they've persecuted his prophets, those who speak on behalf of God. And I've felt those threats myself. I've felt the suppression of society and church culture to just be quiet, sit down, and just be normal, dude. Just calm down. At the same time that I feel like I'm the last one to bow the knee to a westernized version of nominal Christianity, I can't deny that those are thoughts and feelings that I have within me. And so what I've been encouraged by in the story of the prophet Elijah of old with God hiding out in the cave is that God doesn't make Elijah change his words. He doesn't make him change his feelings before God will accept what he has to say. But God does correct his tone. That God says, oh, we're going to do the power, the flexing the muscles thing, huh? I can do that too. But when he does it, his voice is not in those things of violence, in those things of massive power and might. And so what God is teaching me, what God is imparting to me, is that God's voice is not revealed in the flexing of muscles, in the shouting, in the angst. His voice comes in the stillness of silence. Be still and know that I am God. And it's here that God invites Elijah. It's here that God invites me to come out and stand in his presence. That standing in the presence of God, in the silence of his person, that's where I will gain the vision with God, the deputization of how to move forward and what to do to continue to establish the kingdom of God in the earth. And it's also here in this space that Elijah and myself are corrected and gently rebuked. While God doesn't invalidate Elijah's feelings or thoughts, neither does he say that they're correct. While he accepts them, he receives them, and he listens to them, says, I understand where you're coming from, Elijah. God then goes on to correct him. He says, go, here are the tasks to do when you go down the mountain, and oh, by the way, I, God, have reserved for myself 7,000 in Israel who haven't bowed the knee to Baal. That's where God encouraged me, and he also corrected me. In this amazing encounter with my friend Adam, God affirmed, you're hearing from me. The words that you're writing, the words that you're dreaming of, the vision that you're developing, it's true. And I'm supernaturally affirming in you, yep, you're on the right course. But Elijah, the things that you're thinking about, the things that you're passionate about, not only are there other people who know these things, not only are there other people who affirm what you're saying, they've already written and published a book. There have been thousands of people who have read it, and entire communities are being built upon the principles in the book. You're not the only one who knows these things. So my encouragement to you would be, if you're in Christian culture and you feel like there's something deeper, if there's something in you and you're longing for this deeper expression of the Father's heart lived out in covenant community, I'm with you. I'm wholeheartedly behind you. And maybe in your heart there's a sense of frustration that you're being very zealous for the Lord, that you're boldly pursuing him past what you feel like is being demonstrated in the culture around you, in the lives of professing believers that you meet with on a regular basis. And in your heart and in your mind that you feel and you think that people should be more passionate or more pure in their pursuit of who God is, and that you're deeply frustrated, maybe even depressed, that you're hiding out. And when God comes to you in your times of intimacy with him and he says, what's going on with you? What's in your heart? Why are you here hiding out in the darkness? I want to encourage you, be honest, be vulnerable with God. Entrust the contents of your heart and mind to him. He already knows that they're there. He knows your thoughts. He knows your feelings. Don't hide them from him. Tell him, but realize that just because you feel something deeply, just because you think something very clearly, doesn't mean that you're right. However, God does want to hear those things. I affirm those things. Along with God, I don't want to invalidate your thoughts and feelings. However, from my own experience, out of my season of correction with God, what I would invite you to do is to, in essence, cover your face out of respect. Don't brazenly go into God's presence shouting at him, shouting at others about the things that you feel and think, but to allow the gentleness of his presence to draw you out of wherever you're hiding, either in your hurt, your depression, in isolating yourself from other people because you've been hurt. Come out to stand before the Lord in his presence, in the silence and the stillness of his holiness, and know that there you will receive from God the tasks, the good works that he has for you to do in moving forward to establish his righteousness and his person and his kingdom amongst his people, to encourage and refresh you, but to also to encourage and refresh those beyond yourself that you don't know of, that the Lord has retained for himself as faithful, that they would be encouraged in what God has to do through you. So that's what I have for you this week, guys. God simultaneously jacked me up and then jacked me down. Is that a thing? I can make it a thing. He jacked me up and he jacked me down. Wheels in place and sent me back on the road. So looking forward to revealing to you next week what the identity is for these videos. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are too. Hopefully it encourages you and gives you more vision into knowing how you can better partner with me in this process and invite more of our Father's heart into being revealed to us and through us to a world that needs to know Him more. Blessings on your days, guys. I love you lots, and I'll see you in the next video.